I'd say good morning, but
Yeah, it's not the best, is it? We can say, hey, how you doing? Yeah.
Okay, Darvish, when you're ready, please. Good morning, Chris. Could we just start off first of all with the injury news and team news ahead of the weekend?
We do have a few people with some knocks and bumps and bruises. I mean, we're hoping that we can bring Nedham back into the team. You know, obviously he was suspended, and you know, some players like Bobby are still nursing a few bumps and bruises. So there's nothing drastic really than last week really.
Any part of you tempted to throw a lot of the young kids in and give youth a chance ahead of next season almost?
No, I think that whatever happens, we have to first of all try and redress the performance of last week. We have to try to make sure that our home fans see that you know, that was a blip in the way that we performed, and secondly, we have to ensure that the integrity of the Premier League is taken into consideration as regards the other teams that are fighting in the towards the bottom of the league. We have to make sure that we do our bit to go all the way with the competition and make sure that everybody gets a fair crack of staying up or going down.
One man who wasn't available last week was Sandro. Could you clear up what the situation was with that and whether he is available from now on in?
As far as I know, the club are still in negotiations with the powers that be regarding his situation, and this weekend he won't be available, but I'm not sure about next weekend.
Just on the managerial situation, Chris, are you any closer to knowing if you will be the head coach of this club next season?
We're still in negotiations, we're still talking. I'm sure the club will make an announcement, you know, within the next week or so, what they're going to do, but nothing is been put down 100% yet, but I'm hoping that I'm going to be in charge next season.
Well, when did you last speak to Tony Fernandez and or Les Ferdinand, and what were the talks like?
What, regarding myself?
Yeah.
I haven't spoke to them regarding myself for a good week or two now. You know, in depth. We've brushed on it. You know, we brush on it. You know, periodically. But you know, as far as the situation is that they've told me that, you know, we will make an announcement probably within the next week, and then like I said, I'm hoping it's going to be me.
You said you hope it will be you.
Yeah.
Do you believe you will be the head coach of the club next season?
Do I believe that? As much as football will allow it. As much as football will allow it, we know that things change all the time in football. So you know, I do have that belief, but I can't confirm it because there's no pen been put to paper regarding that situation.
You said, you've been speaking to the powers that be at the club. Are you aware that if they're speaking to anyone else, is there an interview process? Is there anyone else involved in this?
I would imagine the way that football managers are appointed, that the same way of conducting interviews is being done all around the country at the moment now with all clubs. So as far as I know, there hasn't been an interview process, but you know, football managers tend to pop up when there's not an obvious interview process.
In the light of the relegation, Chris, some people, experts in inverted commas, have questioned the club, but also questioned whether you're the right man to take the club forward. Why do you believe that you're the right man to take it forward?
Why do I believe? Because I think the players have showed a great response to me being here. I think the fact that we've competed quite admirably in most of the games that we've played in has shown that I do have the ability to take the club forward. And I think the fact that we do have a long-term vision for the club and putting the foundations down so the club has a stable footing for a long time makes me ideal for this job.
Would you then perhaps want a message to the fans to go out that perhaps that the City one was a blip almost compared to what else has been happening throughout the rest of the season? Because you've said that you've been pleased with the response of the players towards you, and then you get relegated, and in the manner that you get relegated, you can't helped you at all?
No, of course it can't. But the manner of relegation doesn't go down to one game. You know, if we lost 1-0, we would still have lost the points. We didn't want to lose 6-0, but the way the players have generally responded, I think the fans have been quite pleased. Even though, you know, I have alluded to the fact that, you know, we've shot ourselves in the foot in many a game by losing 3 or 4, 5, 6 games in the last minute, and it's one of those seasons that probably the players have put their best foot forward, but it just hasn't been good enough at this stage.
There are 9 senior players who are out of contract in the summer. How many of those do you think will be here next season?
I don't have a definitive figure. You know, myself and Les are talking about which players that may be retained by the club. We also have to see what the players have got in mind for their own futures. So we don't have a definitive figure who's going to be kept and who's not going to be kept. I think it's one of those scenarios that we have to plan for the future, but also bear in mind that we do have 2 games that do affect where teams end up at the end of the season.
Can you tell us in that case how many you and Les have discussed that you think we want to retain, and perhaps who they are?
No, I can't discuss that at the moment. I can't discuss that at the moment because there are 9 players out of contract, and you know it would be naive of me to think that all of those players are going to be staying, and obviously we would really need to take a close look at the players that may be available to come in as well.
The fact that you and Les are discussing this and looking ahead to next season and which players you want to
I know what you're going to ask. You're going to say, does that mean that you're going to be managing next year? No, it means that the club are doing our forward planning, and you know, and if it is me, it's better to start the negotiations earlier than not. You know, whatever happens, whether it's me or not, Les still has a job to do as regards building the club up for the future.
I must ask you about bad eggs, Chris. Can you confirm who those players were, and does it tally up with what was reported earlier on in the week?
What was reported in the week regarding the players. I mean, there were some issues. I'm not going to deny that, but we dealt with them at the time, and unfortunately, these things happen in football, and our dirty laundry has come out, you know. But what we've dealt with those situations, and what we need to do is try and draw a line underneath it and move on.
The Vargas situation, not coming on against Palace, and Zarate as well. Are they true? Did those things happen?
Well, I mean, what I can say is that there were problems of a similar nature that we dealt with, and you know, and the players have basically not been available to be picked subsequently.
I must ask you about Adel and Armand Traore, Chris. They're still under contract. They've got 12 months left in their contract. Do you expect them to be here next season? Do you want them to be here next season? And is it in the best interest of themselves and the club if they weren't here next season?
I expect them to be here because they have a contract. Do I want them to be here? I want them to be here if they're fit and ready to play. That's how I look at those 2 players.
And has the problem with them been purely a fitness issue?
Purely a fitness issue that they're not available to be picked. That they're not able to take the field. There has not been any other issue that I've been aware of, apart from that they haven't been able to be in contention for team selection.
Do you think that the presence of these, I keep saying this term, I know it was coined by Joey, these bad eggs, have contributed to your relegation, and how big a part did they play in the relegation?
I think over the course of a season you can't actually pinpoint players and say, right, it's because of you that we've been relegated. I think that when you have a limited squad to be picking from, that always contributes to any negative period you have in the season, because you have to play players that maybe off form or maybe playing with injuries but maybe you wouldn't have picked if you had a broader squad to choose from. So I wouldn't blame them as individuals, but I would say the fact that we haven't had the services of players that were in the original 25 would have hampered our choice of players.
So Ratti is obviously on loan and has gone back to West Ham.
Mm-hmm.
With regard to Vargas, what happens with him next season? Do you think there will be a situation where he can be a player for this club next season?
In this club?
Yeah.
I don't know, because his loan's ended. You know, he's got an injury that may be a long-term injury. He's having that treated. As far as him coming back to the club next season, we haven't discussed that yet.
Just finally, Chris, the two clubs confirmed their relegation, yourselves and Burnley.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have an opinion? Who do you think will be the third team to go down?
Not really. I think they're all pulling off surprise results here and there. I think it's going to be another tight one. I wish we were still in the battle, but I think it's going to be another tight one. I think that the fact that we play two teams that are struggling, we'll have a lot to say about that. And I'm hoping that we can play our part in making sure that everybody knows that we'll be doing our best to keep everything fair and give everybody the best possible chance to stay up if that's their situation. But the Premier League is a fantastic league, and it does bring this excitement towards the end of the season at both ends.
Thank you.
Regarding Newcastle, because they are going to be one of the teams that could potentially be affected, as you've alluded to, by playing them, you have a huge say. Do you think they would have been expecting to be let off a little bit lightly?
Let off on the weekend?
Yeah.
No, we won't let them off. We'll be doing our best to try and win the game. We'll be playing our strongest available players, so we're not just going to throw the youth team in. We're not going to do that. We'll be playing our strongest, because we have some pride ourselves in front of our home fans. It's an obligation to show maximum energy, and I know that mentally I'll be preparing myself for a win at the weekend, and I'm sure the players will want to redress that performance against Man City last week.
When you have had your future confirmed and you know that you're going to be relegated, do you start looking ahead to the next season? Is it difficult to concentrate on the remaining two games?
No, I don't think it's difficult to concentrate on the remaining two games, because you're in a competition that you need to show respect. I mean, obviously we are looking towards next season now, but the first thing is the two games, the remaining two games, because you have people that pay money to watch you play.
And finally, Charlie Austin, there has been a statement said that you want to hold on to him and he's not for sale. Can you just clear up that situation?
Charlie Austin, obviously, goal scorers are a premium, and people always want goal scorers. So we understand that people are going to be trying their best to get him, and he's been a good professional this year, and he's shown his worth. So obviously we'd like to keep him, but you know, the remaining couple of weeks will tell their toll on what people think he's worth and what it's worth to the club to either keep him or let him go.
Chris, the Manchester City performance and result came as a surprise with the way the team has been playing
Yeah.
the majority of your time.
I agree.
Do you think that the Sandro news and perhaps Joey's interview got the players' heads at all have a negative effect
Joey's interview
before the match?
regarding the bad eggs. No, I can see where you might think that. The Sandro situation was obviously a blow, because you know he's a big player for us. But you know, I was confident that the players that were on the field would have, you know, adapted to the news, and you know, performed in a better light than they did. And I don't think the Joey interview had any bearing on the game at all.
With yourself and the rest of the dressing room, is there a sense that Joey gave a frank and honest interview, or did he perhaps break ranks at an inappropriate time?
No, I don't think Joey did anything wrong at all. I think he gave an interview that he thought was the correct thing at the time. I don't think it had anything to do with the way that the game panned out. And you know, even though we didn't perform in the way that we have been doing over the last few weeks, you have to also realise that Man City have done that to quite a few teams, a few teams of higher status than us. So, you know, on their day, they can probably do that to most teams in the league.
Has there been any reaction from Adele or Armand since the weekend, from Joey and stuff like that?
Towards myself, or
yeah, around the dressing room to you?
I've not noticed anything like that. You know, obviously they're going to try and get themselves as fit as they can to be in contention for the last two games, and if not, they've got a year left on their contract, and they need to come back in pre-season firing and ready to go in the correct condition to be in contention to be part of the squad for next year.
Rob Green, there's a lot of reports that Chelsea are interested in him. I realise that you're focused on the first team, that's probably Leslie's role, but are you aware of any firmed up interest from them as well?
No, I'm not. Obviously, there's been rumours, but I think there's been rumours about quite a few teams that would want Rob because he's been in world-class form, and I don't use that term lightly. He's been in absolute world-class form this year, and I think, you know, had he not been, we may have been adrift. You know, even before I came into this job.
Okay, if you turn your cameras off, unless you're filming for cutaways, ladies trying to bring your